Hi, I'm John Harrison, and I'm the instructor for this course, Healing and Forgiveness in Scripture. I'm going to welcome you to the course. Really glad that you're taking the course. There's a lot of reasons why this course is so important. First of all, it gives us a better understanding of what some of the assumptions about the relationship between sin and sickness that existed not only in the days of ancient Israelites, but also in the days of Jesus and the days of the early church, what they thought about why people got sick and what should be done to people when they are sick, and what the effects of healing people who are sick, what that meant to their lives and to their relationships with others. But also because very oftentimes sicknesses in the ancient world was connected with the idea that somebody had sinned and that their sickness was a part of some kind of divine retribution, punishment for that sin. When a person got healed, in many circumstances, not always, there was something that was being communicated about that person's relationship to God. And sometimes that it conveyed the idea of the forgiveness of sins. And the forgiveness of sins is an important concept, even for today, for people, whether they're dealing with sicknesses or not. People talk about forgiving one another, and forgiveness is oftentimes seen as an attribute of Christianity. And yet, the way in which people are oftentimes talking about forgiveness today is not very well rooted into the idea of what forgiveness was thought about in the ancient world. And so, what we're going to do in this course is kind of explore how ancient peoples, how ancient Israelites, how ancient um, people in the Mediterranean world, how Christians themselves thought about forgiveness and what was happening when forgiveness occurred. And when someone was to forgive somebody else, what was it that they were doing? So anyway, we'll explore these concepts, and that will create some, I think, discussion for how we think about forgiveness and how we think about the healing of individuals and what we think about sin and sickness and their relationship to each other. Because a lot of times in kind of our more modern society, we kind of discard the idea that there is any relationship between a person getting sick and any sins that they might have committed. Although we're oftentimes very acutely aware that sometimes people get sick because of behaviors, because they do certain things and they become sick because they did those things. But what about sins? And is or does God still continue to um, cause sickness, or do people become sick because they have been involved in sin? And so these kind of theological questions are raised as well when we look at the biblical text. And so as people sometimes, maybe in hospitals, or people when they're engaged or dealing with different sicknesses in their lives, they sometimes contemplate, well, is this happening to me because I have sinned? And so it's helpful to kind of see that, well, the New Testament and the biblical text also don't have a um, monolithic view of the relationship between sickness and human behavior. And so kind of investigating just how healing is thought of, who healed and why healings were done, and how sins are forgiven, or the way in which people interact with each other in announcing the forgiveness of sins. These are still important topics for believers and non-believers today. So I hope that you will enjoy the conversation that takes place, and I look forward to what we can learn together in this course.